Hello and welcome to the first devlog for Upon Pale Shores, a procedural open-world colony sim RTS built in Unreal Engine 4 by myself, Sam, and my brother Nicholas over the last 10 months or so. So as it is a bit late in the development process, it's kind of an odd time to be starting a devlog, but we figured better late than never. Getting community feedback is always valuable, plus we definitely want to show off some of the things that we've produced so far. So, to that end, we're planning to use this video as a way to introduce the game and mostly just provide a very brief overview without going into detail on any of the specific aspects of the game, which would take way too much time. For those who are interested in the more technical elements of game design, we'll be discussing those more in later videos. Alright, so let's get into this. The first thing we want to talk about is inspirations for the game, and on that side you have two main columns for this game. Basically, A being RTS games. In that column you have Warcraft 3, primarily Age of Empires, and in column B you have RimWorld, Dwarf Fortress, those kind of colony sim base building games. So obviously there are a lot of areas of overlap and difference between those two genres. The biggest things that we take from each of them are from colony sims, getting things like needs and vitals and automation of tasks, building up a consistent group of people that you really care about who they are and whether they live or die. From the RTS side, we could bring in things like better control of units, ability to handle and micro units in and out of combat, and particularly with inspiration from Warcraft 3, having a kind of hero unit to serve as your general who can go around and explore and find different resources around the map, set up other bases, etc. We think that the combination of these two genres actually works pretty damn well. Like, your units individually are more valuable than in RTS because they have their own stat combinations, they have to level up their skills, your hero picks up all these abilities and so forth, and there's permadeath, so they're not going to come back, except for your hero who can be revived at a very high cost. And finally, getting new units to replace the ones that died or to grow your community takes more work because you have to actually go out into the world and explore and find lost survivors that you can convince to join your cause, or wait for occasional migrant groups, which are more similar to what you get in something like Dwarf Fortress or RimWorld. So let's get into the game world of Upon Pale Shores. It's generated anew every time, but generally what you have is this large sort of island continent in a world which is medieval, fantasy, post-apocalypse. By post-apocalypse we mean things like zombie uprisings all over the world, necromantic energy pervading and destroying civilizations, so that all that's really left are scavengers and bandits and occasional towns that have banded together but are very defensive and not open to outsiders. That's all on the theoretical level, of course. In terms of what's actually implemented in the game, you do have zombie hordes, you have wandering camps of bandits which stick around their bases usually, but they also come to check out areas with human activity. Some of this is a little bit too random right now, like in this situation where you have two different groups of bandits come and attack the player's start within less than 5 minutes of starting. Obviously that's unplayable. Obviously we need more events and control of how these sorts of things come at you. But one unique advantage of this format, as opposed to other base builders where you have a static sort of box that you're stuck in, is here you can always pick up shop and run to another base, start somewhere else, and cut your losses basically. And to be clear, that kind of dialectic between random, spontaneous fun and a controlled sort of progression is something that we're keeping in mind throughout the entire development process, and we're going to have to revisit to try and get a better balance once we have more community feedback, more testing, and other data to go off of. So as you can see here, the process of actually building up your base, cutting down, acquiring resources, all of that is already implemented and is fairly smooth and easy to do. It's been core to the development of this game for Nick and I that we don't let this game get too clunky or have the interface be something that's really unwieldy and difficult to use, because in this game, unlike most colony sims, we're not allowing a pause function. We might allow it at a later date for certain difficulty modes or something like that, but for the core gameplay that's not planned, which obviously RTS is real time, so that's part of the reason why, is that when you have the ability to pause, you can kind of make all of the perfect decisions in any given moment, and you could have, units scattered all over the world who you're micromanaging every single one of them, instead of kind of focusing you on just what you have available and what you can actually keep in your mind at any given time. But that also means that we have to make sure that the systems are actually usable in real time. So normally you would have to pause things, designate where you want to dig out, trees you want to cut down, and everything like that. And we wanted to make that easy to do in real time. So one of the main systems we use for that, you may have seen already, is these little icons which we call markers. Markers are a system where you can place them down in different areas, resize them, etc., create a spherical area where tasks of a certain type will be done in that area. Very simple, just like cut down all the trees here, build all the buildings here. And then there are a few quick settings you can do, like make a task priority, activate or deactivate, and so forth. In addition to obviously just right-clicking people and telling them to do something. To make sure that your units aren't doing all the wrong tasks that you don't want them to do, we have this system for loadouts where you can assign different units to different types of loadouts that you build in a separate window, which can enable or disable certain tasks. It also sets like the items you want them to carry and so forth. Obviously, there's a lot of missing polish and things like that on aspects of the interface, animations, and so forth. All of that is definitely going to come later. We've been focusing more on the systems as of now. So markers may not be super pretty right now, but we'll be figuring out exactly how we want them to look as we go along. The ability to make things easier for people to do also plays into how our units handle their vitals. So units that need to drink or eat or sleep tend to have a much larger bar than what it actually takes for them to start drinking or start eating. So they'll start drinking, eating, sleeping, whatever at about 30%, and they only start taking damage from that at 100%. That can take a whole in-game day, which could be like 20 or 30 minutes even. So that makes it pretty convenient because if you need to grab units suddenly and send them out on a mission, like go exploring, whatever, they won't be, oh, I just happen to be needing to sleep right now. They would have already handled that earlier in the base. Also, even though there are different levels of urgency and priority to different tasks and to things like fulfilling their needs, player-ordered actions will always take first priority. So if you need people to cook something right now so that they don't starve, they won't be standing around throwing a tantrum instead of doing what you're telling them to do. So getting back into the wider world comes to a lot of these sort of objectives to the game, because there is that element of sitting back, building your base, reacting to things that come at you, but there is also the opportunity to go and explore new areas, to find different resources. There are biomes like wild areas, evil areas, good areas. There are swamps, mountains, forests, plains, and combinations of any of these different attributes. Plus a lot of these NPC towns which you could potentially go to war with or negotiate with once we have more of those sort of civilization mechanics in place. One of the big elements for our future design goals is trying to take the ingredients that we've planted into the world, things like necromancer towers, evil forests, civilizations, and make them more active in the world. Like, necromancers exist right now, but they just basically sit in a tower until you go and attack them. What we want them to do is things like build up armies of zombies and use them first as scouts, then as small raiding parties, then as larger raiding parties and hordes, and so forth. That way you can have a bit more of a progression of the difficulty. And of course, necromancers wouldn't be the only antagonists. You have warlike civilizations. The bandits obviously are going to do similar things to that. And we have ideas for witch cults and so forth. It's just going to be a question of how many different sort of events and creature types and antagonists we can actually get in the game by the time we go into an early access state. But again, that element of being able to proactively get involved is something that we think the players will really be able to enjoy, because necromancers, for example, don't automatically know where you are. They actually have ghouls in the game right now that are continuously scanning the world and potentially finding places where players might be hiding. So if you were really stealthy, you might kill off those scouts before they could report that information, or you might go and track down the necromancer tower before they even find you and then eliminate them before they know who you are. Okay, but we don't want to get too far into making promises and discussions of what the kind of perfect future is going to be like, because actually getting there is obviously a huge challenge. So to stay a bit more grounded in terms of what we actually have, let's just talk about a few more kind of miscellaneous features and aspects of the game that might not have been clear so far. So there is this perception system, which you might have noticed already, that enemies that are not visible to your units are not visible to you as a player, even though you have a kind of overhead perspective. You do also get these ping effects and map markers and so forth to indicate when there may be things near your units that they haven't quite detected yet. camera is currently in a state where you can pretty much just fly anywhere you want and look at whatever you want, except for the actual creatures that are hidden because of the perception system. However, what we would like to do, potentially at least, is limit your camera to only areas where your player units currently are, or perhaps areas that they've explored in the past. The problem with this is it's obviously quite restrictive and it might frustrate some people, but being able to actually explore the world and scope it out through the eyes of your units rather than just by giving it a big, aerial overview, I think is more interesting. So we're going to experiment with a few different ways of doing that and definitely get some feedback on whether that is clunky and frustrating or whether it's something that really adds to the kind of mystery and exploration of the game. The combat system, crafting, resources, digging and terraforming, loads of different systems like that are already in place, so really most of the game is done at that point. But in the interests of keeping this video at a reasonable length, I'm going to leave those features for later discussion. I do hope that this video has generated some interest in you guys. Like I said, there's a lot of polish, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and tons of mechanics that are buggy or not in their final form at this moment. But it's just two of us, and at the moment I'm working full-time. Nick is also working on a program on Steam, and in general it's a long and lonely process, which is part of the reason we wanted to do a devlog, just to have people to talk about this game with. So if you guys have any kind of comments or things that you want to add, that'd be awesome. And if there are specific topics that would be useful for you guys in your own project, those are definitely things that you could leave a comment about so we can discuss those in future videos. I hope you can like and subscribe to the channel if you did like or want to subscribe to the channel, and otherwise, have a great day.